so many of you came. So, also with the microphone, it shows you the squeaky wheel gets a little attention and gets oils. Well, after a few weeks of not hearing the speaker as well as we should have, and it wasn't the speaker's fault or the audience, I kept clamoring, we must get a microphone, we must get one. And we ended up, you're never going to believe it, we found one right in that room. But that room has been closed forever. I would never have thought of going in.
So what's the moral of the story?
The moral is you have to yell and shout and keep saying, come on, we need it, we need it.
No, the moral
The door.
The moral is
Okay.
seek and ye shall find.
Seek and ye shall find, right in your own backyard, right?
And also, thank you very much.
Oh, don't be silly. Thank you. Thank you all. Health Day is Monday, February 29th at 2 p.m. Whoever is interested, please come here. You can have your blood pressure checked for free. Plus, you can learn the Heimlich maneuver. It's the method to save people from choking. It's worthwhile coming. Okay. Now, without further ado, I do want to thank Thomas Duff. Professor Thomas Duff. He has been, last year he came, he was wonderful. But not only did he give us a wonderful presentation, during mid-semester break in January, he ran a program that would have cost hundreds of dollars. He allowed the group to go for free. And the ones who went loved it. They learned so much about Shakespeare. So I think that we should give him a round of applause for being so wonderful to us and for coming again to talk more about Shakespeare. Oh, and before, I also wanted to say one other thing. We're planning the symposium, which is an all-day, it's a wonderful program for the end of my group, May 19th. I was very fortunate. Temple Oak Shalom was more than generous in giving it to us for the most nominal fee, and the accommodations are wonderful. And we will limit it to 100 people, and it will be, the first reservations that come back will be the ones taken. We will get it out in about a month. So I just wanted to tell you all about it. Okay? It will be on a Thursday. From 10 to 5, we will have speakers, we will have discussion groups, lunch, wine and cheese. It will be a very special affair. And I wanted to keep it down to nothing, but I couldn't. So we have to pay for the food, $3.50. So, I mean, that's, yeah, $3.50 for the day. But anyway, without further ado, please let's give a warm welcome of applause to Dr. Thomas Duff.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a lovely day.
Yes,
It's just started. I always like to come here because there's so many places that I recognize. In particular today, I have Dr. Eden Serow, emeritus professor from Seton Hall, sitting in the back there in that beautiful blue shirt. He was probably the greatest influence upon me. I gave out, we gave out those green flyers. Eamon Kelly is with the Abbey Theatre, and he's been to the university twice before. He's out on an American tour. He's going to be up there on St. Patrick's night. Unfortunately, we were able to book him in. We had to charge $10 because, of course, his fee is gone up tremendously. He's going to be at Carnegie Hall on Sunday before. But we have Aideen O'Donnell, the Irish harpist, is going to sing Irish ballads and play for us for 35 minutes, and then Eamon will come out with his old crumpled hat and start telling stories of his youth. When he heard the old storytellers, the Shanachie, tell the stories. And he's remarkable because he has this lovely Kerry accent. And part of the joy of the story is in the telling of it. You see. Speaking of which, St. Patrick's Day coming up. My wife is from Ireland, you know, and she said, now don't go in there and start telling them the Irish jokes. Well, of course, I'm going to have to tell them. We had an Irish poet last year visit us, and we took him out for dinner, as is the custom. And he told this following story. I love the story. There was a man one time, and he hadn't seen his friend, the priest, 25 years. So the priest said, "Well, Michael, how are you?" "Fine." "Did you ever get married?" "No, I never did, Father." "Why is that?" "I don't know why. I met a number of lovely young ladies, but for one reason or another, when I bring them home, my mother didn't like them. There wasn't one that she liked." "Oh, yes, there was." "That's true, yes, Father, there was one. And the curious thing, Father, she looked like my mother. She had the same voice as my mother, and the same manners, the same gestures as my mother." "Well, man, why didn't you marry her?" "Tell you the truth, my father didn't like her." Well, now today we're going to be looking at the sonnets of Shakespeare. You know that these sonnets were first published in the year 1609. Well, Shakespeare, does anyone need a copy of the sonnets?
Yes. Well, okay. I have you check it out.
Yeah. I've got this one. No, that's not. Well, that's Saxon. Yeah, but that wouldn't be Shakespeare's language. Shakespeare's language evolved from the Anglo-Saxon through Chaucer. See, and so that he would be several centuries later. So he would be about 75 years away from what we would call modern English, which would begin about 1660. Anyway, Shakespeare was born in 1564, and these sonnets were not published until 1609, so he was 45 years old, and he was going to be dead at 52. So, not much is known about sonnets, but a lot of speculation has been given. There is no group of poems in the English language, none, which are better than these lyrics of our foremost poet. And I'm including the other Elizabethans, I'm including the Romantic poets, and all our modern poets. But this group of poems, 154 poems, right, together present almost every possible problem found in literary scholarship. First of all, the question can be brought up, as someone said to me, did Shakespeare write the sonnets? Well, you get into the whole business of the Bacon controversy, you see. Was he really the man that wrote the plays because there's so much learning and knowledge in the plays? Well, I think he wrote the plays. I have a friend in Ireland who is, his name is John D. Keane, and he's written 27 plays. He was given an honorary degree by Trinity College. The play that's being brought to Moscow with Amy Kelly in the Abbey Theater is one of his plays called The Field. He went to school up to senior year in high school, and then he was expelled because he was smoking and writing poetry. But he's a natural, and he's the greatest storyteller that you'll find outside of Eamon Kelly in all of Ireland, you see, and they're both from the same little town, Listowel, in County Kerry. Anyway, are the sonnets a literary exercise, or are they, in fact, the key to understanding Shakespeare's heart? Well, I always like to see what other poets say about Shakespeare. And Wordsworth said, with this key, Shakespeare unlocked his heart. It's hard to think that these poems were simply written for one's entertainment. As say, John Milton wrote Allegro and Il Penseroso, if you remember. Are the sonnets in proper order? We don't know. Do they refer to real people? Who are these people? Well, we can only speculate. Listen to the dedication that the printer, Thomas Thorpe, in London, put on the cover of the sonnets. To the only begetter of these ensuing sonnets, Mr. W.H., all happiness, and that eternity promised by our ever-living poet, wisheth the well-wishing adventurer himself, Thorpe, in setting forth. Well, who's Mr. W.H.? We don't know. We can speculate. We can say it might have been Henry Wriothesley, the Earl of Southampton, but then the initials would be H.W. And then one critical saw, oh yes, well he wanted to disguise his name, so he could put W.H. Well, another said it might be William Harvey, who was the uncle of the Earl of Southampton. And this man may have asked Shakespeare to write sonnets urging this young man to marry. Okay? It may be William Herbert, the Earl of Pembroke. And it may be several other candidates. I don't think it's very important. I think what matters is the individual poem and the individual beautiful painting in words that we can appreciate for the wisdom, for the diction, for the music, right? For the imagery, right? And consider each poem a work of art. And not get too involved in what I would call the narrative possibilities. Let's talk about the narrative possibilities to give you a frame on this. You take a look at the poem that you have here. It's sonnet 144, right? Now you might say, why did I start with 144? Well, because this sonnet was published 9 years earlier in a commonplace book called Pallades Tamia, edited by Edward Meares. And he talked about Shakespeare's sugared sonnets. So this sonnet, we know, at least this one and at least one other, appeared in that anthology. Watch the narrative frame. We're talking about characters, people. He says, 2 loves I have, of comfort and despair, which like 2 spirits do suggest me still. The better angel is a man, right fair. The worser spirit, a woman, colored ill. To win me soon to hell, my female evil tempteth my better angel from my side, and would corrupt my saint to be a devil, wooing his purity with her foul pride. Pride here suggesting her sexuality. Okay? And whether that my angel be turned fiend, suspect I may, yet not to tell. But being both for me, both to each friend, I guess one angel in another's hell. Yet this shall I ne'er know, but live in doubt, till my bad angel fire my good one out. And of course, that last line has a lot of, is heavily fraught with sexuality too, a suggestion being there that there will be some kind of. I noticed.
Turn it down.
I think it's so.
Yeah.
Let me turn down the volume. I think it's just about right now. As long as you don't get that squeal. Yeah. Well, now you see you've got here some kind of some sensational news for the average reader. In London, here's this renowned and respected poet, right, who's been invited to the palace so many times, both when Queen Elizabeth was reigning and then later King James. And we have the suggestion of a triangle. Shakespeare, the poet, a man and a woman, and then he's having a liaison with the woman herself, and then his friend forms this liaison. And of course, in the high schools of America and England, we are given one or two sonnets, and we think of Shakespeare and the bucolic town of Stratford-on-Avon and so forth. This is too high.
Should we do it that way?
No.
We thought, yeah.
I don't need it, to tell you the truth.
Great.
Oh, this is the way it should be.
Move it out of the way.
Well,
Want me to put it down out of the way?
No, we
that's all
did.
right. Okay. So that's what we find in terms of a general narrative structure. But there's another character. Another character is going to enter this sequence, and that's going to be the rival poet. That will be a little later. I want you to turn now, if you will, to Sonnet 12. The first sonnet of Shakespeare begins with the line, "From fairest creatures we desire increase, that thereby beauty's rose might never die." And the first 15 sonnets are directed to a young man, and they urge him to marry. The way to cheat mortality, the way to defeat Father Time with his side, is through one's progeny. Marry, or else your beauty goes to the grave with you. It's a very selfish thing. You're a glutton unless you marry and reproduce your image. Okay? Now I'm going to look at this one sonnet of those 15 because I think it is particularly effective in terms of its imagery. As we read this, I want you to think of the appeals to the senses. Shakespeare had this tremendous gift of creating a picture in mind, or else a sound. And unlike some poets who will give us one or two in a poem, he bombards the imagination. So we are never bored, you see. There is a profusion, a cornucopia of pictures. Tell me what pictures now. I'm going to ask you, what pictures do you see in this sonnet? When I do count the clock, it tells the time. I see the brave day sunk in hideous night. When I behold the violet past prime, and sable curls, all silvered o'er with white. That's in this print there, that bar. When lofty trees I see barren of leaves, which erst from heat would canopy the herd which formerly did. And summer's green all girded up in sheaves, borne on the bier with white and bristly beard. Then of thy beauty do I question make, that thou among the wastes of time must go. Since sweets and beauties do themselves forsake, and die as fast as they see others grow. And nothing against time's side can make defense, save free. Be brave, he takes the defense. All right. Let's have some pictures.
Louder, please. You can't hear her.
It's the variance of winter as compared to autumn, where things are gradually dying and dying and dying. And he doesn't even mention the beauty that could be seen as parts of autumn. It seems to be sadly go from beauty to death, the dying of all parts.
How do you cheat that?
By children, by having children, that's right.
It's in the couplet, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's in the final two lines. You see. Now most of Shakespeare's sonnets are 3 quatrains, 4 lines each, right? And then the rhyming couplet, which is a kind of commentary on what is preceded. Once in a while, he'll use the octet and the sestet, right? Arrangement. And of course, you know that the rhyme scheme is fixed: A B A B, C D C D, E F E F, and then
G, G.
G. Yes.
I get the feeling
as I read this from the very beginning. This is not meant to be depressing. I get the feeling of hope all the way. I know at the bottom I'm going to hit something good.
I think that's what he's saying, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, what you're saying is the cycle. It's the way that the cycle of time, right?
But this is nature.
Right, exactly. But he's saying in effect, if all of nature fades, because that's the way it is.
Sure.
I can tell you, if you have a child, you'll defeat time. Right? You will be immortal through your children. And children are, let's face it, a form of immortality, right? And as Wordsworth said, George Eliot quoted it at the beginning of Solace Marner, if you remember. A child brings with it hope and forward-looking thoughts. Right? So there is hope. Now, I want to go back and just look at some of these pictures. First of all, I hear that clock ticking. Remember in Macbeth, the last syllable of recorded time is the last tick on the clock. And see the brave day sunk in hideous night. One of his most popular images is the contrast between light and dark, right? Black and white. Particularly, of course, you have here then the dawn coming to erase the night, and then, of course, sunset fading into black night. Okay? The violet passed by. Can you see it fading? The color is there. Sable curls, right? Now watch this. There's a kinetic action here because we have the sable curls, now suddenly they're white. Right? Lofty trees I see barren of leaves. If you've been up to Warwickshire, Shakespeare country, you see those trees in the summer and you see the cows under the trees. Some people say, well, that's a sign it's going to rain if you see cows under the tree. I always said it's because the sun is hot. And the cows to cool off. But watch how quickly that image changes too. Lofty trees I see, yes, barren of leaves, just like that. Two pictures in one line. Summer's green old, bearded up in sheaves, born on the bier with white and bristly beard. Well, now, if you were to say summer's green, what is summer's green? It could be barley, right? It could be corn, right? And you've seen how farmers will stack the
Corn.
whatever it is, and the whole field will be filled, right? Now, you know, born on the bier, this is the funereal cart. So here's the wagon. You know how the farmers would load their sheaves onto this, and they put a rope on it with a big stone on either end to keep it down. Born on the bier, right? With white and bristly beard. Okay? And there it is. There's the beard here, right? And it's here. The sign of a great poet is one who sees correspondences in things that are different. It's very easy to see differences in things that are similar. You've got two twins. One's taller than the other. There's no great insight there. But to look at nature and to look at the beard of an elderly man and to find that correspondence, you see, that's the sign of a true poet. All right, we haven't finished.
Don't they call that a beard though too? Like she's like
Yes.
that. I think they call that.
They actually, these four things just fuse together, and when all are working for that they're incomparable. Oh, they're the finest expressions we have of the lyric form in the language. Okay, I want to move ahead now. We'll go to sonnet 18. You know that he's using the iambic pentameter, which is 10 beats through the line. It's the Unstressed followed by the stress. So it would be like this.
Da 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 da.
Alright? Don't want to go into all the metrical feet. But that is the most flexible meter in the language. And of course a great number of experiments were made by Seton and others. So when we read that first line, it isn't shall I compare thee to a summer's day. It's shall I compare thee to a summer's day. Now, this is one of the loveliest of all. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Why? Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. What a picture that is. And summer's lease, he likes to use real estate industry, have all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven, the sun, shines. And often is his gold complexion dim. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Nor shall death drag thou wanderest in his shade. You see the heavy strength of that line. When in eternal lines to time thou growest. Wait a minute. Watch what he does now. He introduces a new idea. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life. What's he talking about? What's he talking about? How else can you cheat death? Art. So, at sonnet 16, he first introduces this idea. And you know, really, as we go through the sonnets, we see more and more that he forgets about children. He's saying, it's my writing. That's what's going to make you immortal. Look, here it is, February 25th, 1988. And we're talking about this verse. We're talking about what Shakespeare said. So it works, doesn't it? I mean, art endures. I can remember seeing the painting of Aristotle, Rembrandt. Aristotle contemplating the bust of Homer. And you stand in front of that painting and you think of Rembrandt putting the last touch on it, and then you're transported to the flood of years backwards. And your experience is heightened, your life is enriched. You're living not only here, but you're living there also. And I think great art can do that. He's saying to this young man, my writing will keep you immortal. Watch what he does now in the next sonnet. Look at the couplet. I want to look at the couplet first. Do thy worst, old time, despite thy wrong, my love shall in my verse ever live young. Okay? So it's a repeat of the same thematic concern. However, let's go back now. I'm supposed to go to Ireland to give a paper at this Writers' Week conference, and I'm going to talk about Shakespeare's writing style because these are writers. Remember when we had those lovely days in school, when we had the transitive and intransitive verbs, the regular and irregular, and then we had these joyful moments with active and passive voice. Shakespeare uses the action verb, in which the action is carried across from the subject, the doer, active voice, to a receiver of the action. Right? And that's what gives him great strength, you see, given the image in the line, right? And given the music of the line, given this beautiful, precise diction, right? And the idea. Look at these lines now. He starts out in the first line with the present participle, devouring, right, formed from the verb, as the modifier of time, which is the subject of the verb. Verb blunts, right? Blunt what? Blunt pause. You put this in a passive construction, here's what you get. The lines pause were blunted by devouring time. You get nothing. But watch what he does in the next line. Make the earth, right? Devour is the verb, subject earth. Devour what? Brood. Then the next, pluck the keen teeth. Burn the long-lived phoenix in her blood. Right? Now, when you go to hear his verse on the stage, you see that's why he's so powerful, because he's writing a verse. And the characters come out and they start to speak, and they have such strength because they have, of course, the physical voice and so forth. But what they're saying, they say with such force. We'll give you a little of this now. Watch. Devouring time, blunt thou the lion's paws. Make the earth devour her own sweet brood. Pluck the keen teeth from the fierce tiger's jaws, and burn the long-lived phoenix in her blood. Okay, cool down. I mean, he gets carried away. It's almost, you can see the theatrical Shakespeare breaking through the lyrical. Right? It's so dramatic. It has such power. Oh, what does he say? Make glad and sorry season as thou pleadst, and do whate'er thou wilt for the time to the wide world onward fading speaks. But I forbid thee one most heinous crime. Oh, carve not with thy hours my love's fair brow, nor draw no lines there with thy antique pen. Him in thy course untainted do allow, for beauty's pattern to succeeding men. If to thy worst all time, despite thy wrong, my love shall in my verse ever live. Yeah. Okay, so now he struck gold here on a thematic pattern he's going to hold on to. 65 is one of the crown jewels. You know, it was very hard for me to pick. Number 65. It was very hard for me to pick and limit, really, the choices for this afternoon, because there's so many absolutely magnificent poems. But this one you may recognize. Watch the beat here, the relentless ocean coming in, since brass, nor stone, nor earth, nor boundless sea. But sad mortality o'ersways their power. How with this rage shall beauty hold, whose action is no stronger than a flower? Oh, how shall summer's honey breath hold out against the wrackful siege of battering days, when rocks impregnable are not so stout, nor gates of steel so strong, but time decays. Oh, fearful meditation. Where, alack, shall time's best jewel from time's chest lie hid? Or what strong hand can hold his swift foot back? Or who his spoiled beauty can forbid? Oh, none, unless this miracle have might, that in black ink my love may still shine bright. You know, there's certain poems that just move, they grasp you, and they won't let you go, you know, and every line just entices you to continue to the end.
How is it he uses the expression gates of steel? They didn't have steel at that time.
Well, he had an experimental lab in his basement.
Strange use of word.
They must have had something. They must have had, you know, that iron, you know. So maybe the word steel meant iron, you know, synonym. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good suggestion. That using the idea of steel as a verb, right? Steel yourself to your task. Now, if you look at that line and you said gates of steel, it doesn't work. You can't bend it in there.
There was steel in biblical
You remember a reference to steel?
times. Do I?
Yes.
Yes. The Jewish poem is supposed to be torn, never cut with a knife, because the knife represents steel, and steel is a weapon. And that's the tradition later.
Yes?
I just wanted to say that I'm thrilled with these because I feel that his metaphors and his similes concerning nature, time, strength of rock, grass, still there's the eternal silver lining in the way he feels about love and youth,
Right.
which are different from many.
He's a realist in knowing that love is constant, you see, and that
It's hopeful.
there. Yes, right. You know, I think he is our greatest poet primarily because, well, one of the reasons is that his images are taken from nature.
Yeah.
You know, he deals with the sun, right, and the stars and the sea. Right? I'm going to New Orleans in March to give a paper on Shakespeare and the sea, as expressed in Hamlet, Othello, Lear, and Macbeth. And it's interesting how the sea is a very dangerous force. And the sea is used to show the enormity of man's potential for evil. Say in Macbeth, all the waters can't wash off all the emptiness waters. The multitudinous seas will incarnadine rather than my yes.
We used to live in Atlantic City for many years. And when the storms, when those sea waves came, they would hit the barriers that were extended, made of heavy rocks,
Right.
that extended into the sea to break the power of the waves. It didn't succeed. Broke down the boardwalk, broke down the supports, would break down rocks with walls 6 to 8 feet thick, and they'd be cracked and lined in shatters the following year.
Don't we have the ocean in Genesis?
Unbelievable.
Right, the face of the water. And then we go back and we think of Noah, right, and Jonah, and then we go into Odysseus being washed up on the beach, and Dawn comes with her rosy fingers, and then Aeneas going away from Carthage, and he sees the funeral pyre, and Dido has killed herself, thrown herself onto the wood fire, and he looks back and knows what has happened. What about baptism, and we immerse the person in the water? What about the bursting of the water in childbirth? I mean, these are very archetypal things, you see. The ocean, and water, and the washing of hands. I don't know how I get off on that, but it's oh yeah, steel. Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't know. I have a feeling probably the word was used pretty regularly to suggest some kind of iron-like substance. Now, we want to go next to what I consider to be the quintessential sonnet of Shakespeare. If you want to have some fun, memorize this, will you please? I tell my students, look, sonnet 73, sonnet 73. I tell my students, I'm giving a test on Monday, and I said to them, if you're going to write about Shakespeare, you better know your material. You make a general statement, I want you to support it, chapter and verse, by quoting the text. Then you're going to persuade me, okay?
How come I remember so long back that we had to memorize the 16, let me not to the marriage of...
Oh yeah, 116.
How come you didn't include that one?
We'll include it. I think I did include it. I don't
Yeah? Yeah. Next one. Oh.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah. Well, I told the girl, but she missed it.
It's on the back of there.
Let me have that book.
Oh, good.
73. So don't fire her.
I won't. No, we're talking about another one. I'll tell you about that a little later. Now, Sonnet 73. Look at the sonnet. It is the most teachable of all poems because it breaks up so beautifully
73, okay.
structurally into the 3 quatrains. The first 4 lines, he talks about his aging, and he compares himself to the coming on of winter. Okay? In the second quatrain, he introduces the sunset before night. And then the third, he is a dying fire. Right? Now, given these 3 things, yet he shows some very existential wisdom, I think, by saying, look, if this is so, I'm getting older and you're getting older. Well, let's...
Thank you, because I'm old too.
Okay. I'm just saying that if we are aware that time is passing, that makes life more meaningful for us. It's more intense in experience. Okay? Watch what happens. Do you remember in our town, Emily dies in childbirth. And she goes to the upper regions, and she says, I'd like to go back to Earth. And they say, don't go, Emily. Don't go. You'll regret it. No, I must go back at least once. Well, they say, okay, we have a special arrangement. You're allowed to go back for one day. Which day do you want? And she says, I'll go back for my 12th birthday. So, scene is in the kitchen, and there is her mother and father, and they're getting everything ready, breakfast. She has to go to school. And they put the birthday gift on the table. And then the father goes and he shouts up the staircase, Emily, where's my birthday girl? Where's my birthday girl? And Emily is standing, watching all this, you see. And she starts to weep. And she says this, isn't it sad that life is so beautiful and we don't notice? What happens in that play, Thornton Wilder shows the importance of just smelling the coffee, seeing the paper thrown up on the lawn, you see? All the things that we take for granted. But the poet will always do this for us. He'll make us feel it, touch it, you see? Appreciate the moment. Shakespeare does this supremely in this sonnet when he talks about love and being aware, intensely aware. He says, that time of year thou mayest in me behold, when yellow leaves are none, or few, to hang upon those boughs and shake against the cold. Bare, ruined flowers, or late the sweet bird sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day, as after sunset fadeth in the west. By and by, black night doth take away. Death's second self, that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie. The deathbed, whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong. To love that well, which thou must leave ere long. So, and this is the message of the poet's concept. I saw that film last week, and I taught that story, short story course. It's playing at the last picture show in Union. It's called The Dead, James Joyce's great, long short story. And John Huston's son adapted it. He was nominated for an Academy Award.
That was the last thing he did.
He did another short little film. I saw it in one of the columnists' blurbs. That was his last major. And his daughter is in it, Angelica is in it. It's January 6th. It's the Feast of the Epiphany, which is the 12th days of Christmas, right? That was the day the 3 wise men came, you see. And Epiphany means the revelation. Well, we were at a dinner party, and there's some tremendous acting here. Donald Donnelly, Marie Keene, Dan and Harold and so forth. The two maiden aunts play the piano and they sing and they have loose and so forth. And then finally the party's breaking up, and as she's coming down the staircase, she hears the voice of this tenor singing the last arpeggio. And she stops in her tracks. And her husband looks at her. And all the while it's snowing outside. So they go to the Gresham Hotel. And you want me to tell you the rest?
Yeah.
Well, you know the story. Well, what happens then?
No, we don't.
What happens is that she starts to weep. And he says, "What's the matter?" She said, "That was a song that a young boy, Michael Fury, sang to me when he was 17, and he was very sick. And I was going away to the convent. She was in Galway, and she was going to Dublin. And he stood in the rain, you see, and sang this song. And she said, he loved me. And when I went away to the convent, he said he didn't want to live any longer." Well, the husband goes to the window and he looks out and he sees the snow falling across Dublin into the Shannon River, and that crosses in the graveyard in Galway. And he thinks the dead are always with us. The dead are always with us. And he's saying to himself, I never had a love as my wife did. Her whole life, and that was, so many years before. It never left her because of the intensity of the feeling that this boy had for her. It's a beautiful, beautiful commentary. You asked me that which, you tie that in with Sonnet 73.
I'm tying it in because he finds always death all around. He finds death all in the living, and he finds death in the dead. And he's tying it all into one vast image of death, which the snow represents.
Exactly.
Tying and everything together. Here we get a different image. Love which binds everything together. There, it's death that binds everything together. Furthermore, I never could make sense of that story in that they don't seem to be having a bad time, all these people. This is their daily life, and no life is really much more passionate, though we'd like it to be, than as portrayed in the story.
Well, I think certain characters are interested in opera, others are interested in politics, one girl in particular. Yes, they have their passions, you see. But he himself did not have the experience.
But he seems to have it. He enters into her mind. He knows what she must be feeling. There's a certain ambiguity there that I never could understand. He seems to have certainly more understanding of her than most men have of their wives or mistresses or whatever.
Well, you see.
And I'd be content with that.
Well, you know what happened? I mean, Gabriel, that's his name, is actually Joyce, because Joyce met Nora, who was from Galway. And I've been to that graveyard, my uncle still lives, where the boy died. And Joyce's wife told him about that boy. And so when he sat down to write this, he himself was, he was the narrator.
Then he wrote The Exiles after that, which is
Well, that's-
also another one of those stories.
Well, The Exiles is his play, and it's a pretty bad
Can we
play.
get back to Shakespeare?
Yeah, I'm thinking. So this is what's great. Amanda, you know what it is? Sometimes you go into a class and you get no response. I can remember teaching the love song of J. Alpha Prufrock once. I knocked myself out, questioned somebody else. Everybody, There's nothing here, but here you see, this is like a bountiful feast here. The questions are coming up. Okay, we'll get back now to Death's second art. The expression Death's second self would mean night. Night is darkness, death, gloom, the end. That's second self. Now, we're up to
116.
Oh yes, 116. Now we've had a request for 116. tell you a story. I had one September, it was raining terribly, you know, and 5 minutes after the class started, in walks a girl, dripping wet, hair all down, tangled and everything else. And she stopped the class. Everyone looked at her. And she said, "Is this Shakespeare?" And I said, "No, it's Duff." She invited me to her wedding years later. And you know what they do now? They have little readings. The groom will read something to the bride, and so this is what she read to her husband. And you could hear a pin drop in the church, because it's Shakespeare's statement about what real love is. And he finds the basic common denominator, the primary consideration is constancy, that it's there in good times and bad, that it holds on, you say. And so he uses the North Star, and he uses the idea of a compass, never changing and so forth. Time can't change it, you see. The passage of youth can't change it. And he stakes his reputation as a poet upon this belief. And saying, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when an alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh, no. It is never fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool. O rosy lips and cheeks, within his bending sickles compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out, even to the edge of doom. This be error, and upon me prove, I never read, and no man ever loved." How's that? There are certain ones that just unfold, you know, that just...
The moral of the story is, if he goes, let him go, because he didn't love you anyway. Because if he loved you, he would never leave. Right?
I tell you, there's a great deal of wisdom in this track.
I think also that love doesn't show age or anything. It's timeless.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
I said that it didn't matter if the person was beautiful once, because he only saw her.
So what does it mean when a man leaves his wife for a younger woman?
That's another course.
What? If it were just Shakespeare. It's my love is constant. It's the objects that change.
That's in the sociology department.
Yeah. No, if it's not constant, then it's not true love, and you don't want it, right?
The love is constant, it's the object that changes.
Oh, well.
That's another big track.
No, it isn't. Love is eternal. True love is eternal.
Yes, question.
I don't know the answer to the question this lady next to me asked. Did Shakespeare ever love? How could he possibly have same love with my answer without having felt that profound emotion?
What was that?
Well, we know that he married when he was 18 years old.
Background of Shakespeare.
Yeah, he was born in Stratford, and his father had made harnesses and gloves and so forth. And when he was 18 years old, he married a woman named Anne Hathaway, who, was 26. He had 3 children by the time he was 21. He had twins and a little girl, 2 girls and a boy. Apparently there was some kind of falling out, because we find him in his mid-20s down in London by himself. And I suppose he went back there when he could. He bought a beautiful home there when he retired. He was about 49 years old. But I think he understood the possibilities of love and also the disappointments of love. You see, I think people who suffer in love come away stronger than those that just, everything goes along beautifully all their lives and there's no tension or disappointment or whatever. Of course, the man had tremendous imagination, you see. He could, if he could write and pretend that he was a 13-year-old girl on the eve of her marriage, in Romeo and Juliet. I mean, that's very powerful, sensual. In addition to being sensuous. And he could understand Ophelia's love for Hamlet. And all the others, Rosalind, Portia, and so on. We're talking here about a mind, you see, and a spirit that kind of transcended the ordinary and the extraordinary, So if he did not feel it himself, he could imagine it. Okay? Now I want to conclude here today with the most humorous, yes.
The Jews in Shakespeare's time had not taken control of Gaza Strip. Why was he so negative?
About the Jews.
Senor Antonio, many a time and oft you have rated me about my monies and my usances. Still have I borne it with a patient shrug, for sufferance is the badge of all time. You call me misbeliever, cutthroat dog, and spit upon my Jewish deputy, and all for use of that which is mine own. Well then, it now appears you need my help. Go to, you come to me and you say, Shylock! You would have monies. Monies is your suit. Is it possible? A dog? Can a cur give 3,000 bucks? Shall I bend low with bated breath and in a bondsman key say this on Wednesday last you spit on me, another time you called me dog. And for these courtesies I lend you thus much monies. Thank you very much. No. Look, that is a whole story. When I teach merchandise, I bring in cantors, rabbis, and we get in a big group discussion with the students back and forth. All right? And I don't have the time to do that, but that's one of my favorite plays, because in that play he shows that Shylock has been put into a corner, you see. I mean, he's been mistreated, and so he's lashing out. His daughter elopes with a Christian, takes all of his jewels, money, gold, everything. So the only thing he's got is revenge. Right? The only thing. He's just hardened.
So in your opinion, he was non-romantic?
I'd say this. I would say that you would have to say that Othello then was his anti-black play, and you'd have to say that he had animus toward the Irish or the Scotch, or the Welsh. That he was anti-Italian because of Iago, I mean, he had a very generous and broad view of mankind. And even though in the play, Shylock is the villain, and he happens to be Jewish, that doesn't mean that Shakespeare had a bias. My God, if he had a bias, what hope is there for us, to try to be decent with all human beings? What do we learn from the man then? We say that this great spirit was actually small-minded. I don't see it. I never felt that. Sure.
What do you think of this current fashion of bringing Shakespeare up to modern times? That the public theater is doing.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Well, I saw The Merchant of Venice in Lincoln Center, and it's the paparazzi, Via Veneto on motorcycles. Antonio's got, he just got the coat over his shoulders, down to his ankles, and he's got the big sunglasses on, and he's got the cigarette. And he's in love with Bassanio, you see. He's supposed to be his friend, but he's actually in love with him. Well, I mean, I don't think that's what Shakespeare intended, you see. I say, find out what Shakespeare intended, and then please, just follow. Do it. Yes.
modernize it, and they use modern clothes, and they don't use it.
Oh, there it is.
Can't hear, we can't hear.
Well, she was saying that in one opera that she saw where it was modernized in terms of the costuming, it didn't work with the music.
Kiss me cake.
Oh, that was good. Yeah, but of course, what they tied that in was, you know, that whole Hollywood idea of, hey, we're putting on a show, you know, that kind of thing. It works. Sure, sometimes it works. Well, all right, let's go back now. We're going to do, we're going to look at 130. Now, here is a man who knew the Petrarchan love conventions. You love this woman because her beautiful face and her eyes are like stars, and her hair is golden, and they are snares to entrap men, and her beautiful lips and teeth and complexion, and her footfall, and her voice like honey and all that. All right. That's idealized. Now, Shakespeare's not going to do that when he's talking about this woman. That she's a married woman. He's a married man. They've been having this affair. He's going to celebrate her. He's also going to have some fun with the convention of Petrarch. And you get, in toto, you get a very charming, delightful poem. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. Snow be white, why, then her breasts are done. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damask, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress breathes. Yeah, there's a earthy quality. I love to hear her speak, and well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go, I mistress, when she walks fed on the ground. And yet by heaven I think my love as rare as any she, lie or false. So, you know, the last two sonnets, he tells us about Cupid's arrows being shot into a cold fountain pool. And what happens is that the water doesn't put out the heat of the arrow. Rather, love's arrow heats the water. And in fact, then, love is always going to be with us. You see, it's there, it's constant, it is never ending. That capacity, that feeling is going to be with us. He knows it, he recognizes that. And then he finishes, that's it. Well, I have nothing more to say. If you have any questions. Here's one song we forgot. I don't know if I know it all. It goes something like this. When in disgrace. When in disgrace, with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him, the friends possess. Myself almost despise him. Haply, I think on thee. And then my state, like to the lark arising, the sullen earth sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remember, such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state.
What number is that one?
I think
Remember?
it's early. It's an early 38, I think.
Let me see.
I'll find it for you. Yeah, I'll just get it for you.
Dr. Duff, before we break, may we say hello to your wife, Kay?
Oh, yes.
Would you
Kathleen.
stand, Mrs. Duff, a very charming.
Oh, that's 29.
Before we have more questions, okay, I just wanted to say, whoever did not sign up the attendance sheet, please sign it up, because if I ever have to say about the refreshments or something, at least I can say, I can't buy it with a little money, there's a lot of people. Okay. Furthermore, we are so happy that Kathleen came, because we're having a program in the fall featuring Kathleen and Tom. And I just wanted to give you a little preview so that you have something to know. For our next semester, it's going to be something different. One of our programs will be on antiques. And she is an expert antique dealer. And we're going to have each one of you bring in something that you don't know that is of value to you. And she will decide whether it's an antique and what it's worth. In any case, it should be one of the most interesting programs next semester in September, October. So you have to come to that.
Sounds like show and tell, huh?
You don't get this in any other discussion group, that's for sure. And also, we don't get Thomas Duff in any. He is marvelous. And we all... Shakespeare so alive that when people say it, I feel like I'm in a theater listening. You know? If there's any other questions, can we address it? Yeah. We have a few more minutes. Have you ever marketed Shakespeare?
Oh yes, yeah.
Have you ever acted?
Well, I acted when I was in college. I went to St. Peter's College, New York City, and then I did a lot of directing in secondary school. I was taught in high school for 4 years. And then when I came to university, they asked me to be in the Shakespearean play. So I was in about 7 or 8 of them, and I had great fun.
You were also the bishop.
Oh yeah, I was in some Irish plays too. I played a bishop one time. He even got the biggest kick. Because, you know, I went in and all the Bishop Doherty gave me all his outfit, you know. I go up in this pulpit in the darkness, and the light comes down, and I go like this, you say, just like Bishop Doherty. And, you know, people in the audience are kind of like this.
Where I lived, you know, he came in after it was over. You know, I had a lot of company. I lived in Maplewood, and it's about midnight, you know, and there's some people are always afraid there's a little noise, but we heard this noise, and he came dressed as the Archbishop, all up, and he's walking down, and many of the people are Jewish, and he's blessing everybody.
Well, you know what happened? I went in to get the stuff from Bishop Doherty, right? And he said, here, try this on. So it was a little short on me, you know, cassock, all maroon. And then you put a little surplice on top of that, and then you have another thing that ties in and buttons down, all right? And then the beanie. Okay. Now, see, he didn't give me his ring. So you wear the ring, the bishop's ring. But he said, come on, let's have some fun. So we get down to the office, and there are 4 secretaries typing. So the bishop says, excuse me, ladies, would you stop for just a moment? I have here with me a dear old friend of mine from Ireland, the Archbishop of Armagh. So I pull this, you know, I go walking in. They get in line to kiss the ring. But there's no ring. And one says, I thought I recognized him. Well, the bishop was holding on to the wall. It was great fun. Yes.
I have a question about Shakespeare, and we hear so much about his lady loves. And yet, in a program they had on public television recently on Walt Whitman, they brought out the fact that he was homosexual.
Oh, yeah.
Was he bisexual?
Shakespeare?
Yeah.
I never asked him.
I mean, do they say he was?
Well, Oscar Wilde says he was. Some people say, look, there's a book called Shakespeare the Soldier by Professor Gordon. Then you have Shakespeare the Sailor, okay? Then you have Shakespeare the Catholic, Shakespeare the Protestant. Let's put it to music. All right. Oscar Wilde has a little axe he wants to grind and let him. I don't know. It may very well have been. I don't
In
know.
reference to Walt Whitman, it was. The reference was made.
But even there, you notice Professor Bloom up at Yale said he thought that the man never had relations because he was brought up in a family in which was so harsh. You see? And Bloom is one of the Yale critics, so it has to be reckoned with.
But he had children.
Who, Bloom?
No, Shakespeare.
Oh, Shakespeare did, I know. No, we're talking about Whitman, though.
Okay, excuse me. He could be a homosexual.
Well, there's Edward Hugler was professor of Shakespeare at Princeton, and he wrote a wonderful book called The Sense of Shakespeare's Sonnets. And he kind of feels that it is not something that is going to be worth discussing, and he doesn't know. And you see, the great scholars are never speculating. They say perhaps, and they say may, and then they let it go at that. I mean, the fact that a man like Tennessee Williams or Michelangelo had a certain disposition a certain way doesn't affect the work itself, does it?
No.
That's, yes. Oh, no, I had a student, his name was Edward Shakespeare, and he was a descendant of Shakespeare. And he actually looked like Shakespeare. He had a little balding here, and he had a mustache and everything else, and he had the happiest disposition of any student I've ever had in my life. He went into teaching, and now he just finished law school. Amanda, you didn't know, he came after you. But remarkable that when you saw the man, you'd say, my God, that's the living Shakespeare.
Was Shakespeare appreciated while he was alive? How much?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You know, he was given the commission. His company was called the King's Men by James I, and he, when he died, is buried in Holy Trinity Church. Now, what an honor, right? He's actually buried up beyond the altar rail. His brother Gilbert was an actor also, and Gilbert is buried in Southwark Cathedral on the south bank of the Thames. So the man had a marvelous reputation. Ben Jonson said, I love the man, this side idolatry. He just seemed to combine that certain sweetness of spirit, you know, and manners and so forth, and love of people. He was a remarkable person, apparently. You know, he must have known how to handle people. I think he probably directed a lot of the plays and said, look, fellas, you're going to have, yeah, he was an actor, certainly, yeah.
Dr. Duff, is there a comparison, do you think, between Salieri, Mozart, and Christopher Marlowe and Shakespeare? Is there any...
Well, you know, that's the one thing I forgot to mention, and that was, you know, there are 10 sonnets here from sonnets 66 to 76. Another voice is heard. Shakespeare has lost, somehow tarnished his friendship with this person he's writing to, and another person has come in. He calls him an alien hen. And was it the full, proud sail of his great verse that made my verse look so much less? And in sonnet 76, it's the past tense. Now, Christopher Marlowe was born the same year as Shakespeare, but he died when he was 24 years old, just about the time the sonnets may have been written. So he may have been. Wow. He was down in Deptford. So Francis Drake had just come back from the Caribbean with a boatload of gold. And the Queen said, I'm going down there myself, and she knighted him on the deck of the Golden Hind. And it was a big party atmosphere that day. Marlowe went to a tavern and stayed there for many hours, and when the reckoning came, the bill, a fight ensued, and he tried to stab this man, Ingram Fraser. Fraser turned the dagger upon him, killed him. Whether or not in the sonnet the reference is intended for Marlowe is not, we're not sure, but I think it is. I speculate it is. It may be. But Marlowe, I think, inspired Shakespeare because he wrote Edward IV, and then there was Richard II. He wrote The Jew of Malta, then we had The Merchant of Venice, you see, and Dr. Faustus, and Dido, Queen of Carthage, and Tamburlaine, and all these plays were marvelous in their use of blank verse, which was called the mighty line of Marlowe. Okay, so he had a model, okay, which you could follow, and it wasn't anything that Marlowe sat down and said, "Look, Bill, here's how you do it."
Is there an American that you would equate with half of Shakespeare?
Well, there's one person.
What was that question?
Compare some American to Shakespeare, and I'd say there's one person only. One. And you know something? His work is better known than Shakespeare's.
Walt Whitman?
Better known than Shakespeare's throughout the world.
Robert Duff?
The American Shakespeare is Walt Disney. His characters include Mr. Mouse and Mr. Duck, and so forth. But think about it. I often wonder why Walt Disney never did something with A Midsummer Night's Dream, with The Tempest, you know. I mean, the fantasy that he had, you know. Yeah, the dreamlike quality of his characters. But he is better known than Shakespeare, you know. Think of Japan and throughout the world, you know, the films are there.
He's not a poet.
But I think Shakespeare, Disney was probably something like Shakespeare, I think, in terms of personality. He had this kind of ease about him, and talent. You never thought of that, did you? No. It's an interesting thing to consider. I mean, if people throughout the world look at the U.S., they would say that Disney has brought so much joy and brought all these fantastic characters to life and so forth. There are certain passages in Shakespeare, like the Queen Mab speech in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Well, then I see Queen Mab is with you. She is the fairy's midden and comes in shape no bigger than an agate stone, plucked from the lazy forefinger of a maid. Then she gallops night by night over a courtier's nose, and then he dreams of curtsies straight, and the soldier dreams of cannon and so forth. You could just see what he could do with that in the sequence. Maybe somebody will do it yet. And you got any producer friends here? Yeah.
Did Shakespeare travel at all when he was doing these writings?
Some say that he may have been, again, he may have been a soldier because he knows so much about military technique. And yet, if you read the plays about the sea, the Tempest in particular, he has a sailor's inside knowledge of winds and masts and sails and so forth. We know that he left London whenever there was a plague, and probably went down to places like the White Cliffs of Dover, you know, to be near the seaside. And when the plague resided, he'd go back. And he probably knew Scotland, because he was in Stratford, which is about dead center, just below Birmingham. Right? And who knows? He was a very busy man because he wrote 38 plays, and maybe he didn't get out of London too much. But I can't see a man of his imagination and temperament not going over to France and Italy if he could, particularly when he was
Just a
successful.
humorous note.
Yeah.
He was as prolific as Bach. I don't know how he had time for children.
Yeah, well, he had them beforehand. First he made himself immortal for his children, and then he did art. I see. Yes, sir.
You're a doctor, sir. I'd like to ask you a question. My wife wants to bring me to the antique program. How should I take it?
like the guy O'Brien who owned the tavern and used to advertise saying, if your wife drives you to drink, tell her to drive you to O'Brien's. So anyway, I had a great afternoon, and